Hey, Denham, good morning. We are just in between community meeting and first period, so we got about another minute here. Get yourself together, and then we will jump in, get started. All right. All right, y'all. Good morning. Welcome to those of us who just joined. Hopefully, we are all back and with us this morning. As you can see from our slide, we are talking about POV, point of view today. Now, those of you who have been with us know that we have been reading the story Homegoing by Yagai Asi. All right, and that's what kind of we were working on over the weekend and for this second progress report that's going to come out this week. Right. If you have not been with us or if you are behind, there are YouTube videos on the SFILA YouTube of class recordings that you can watch to get caught up. You can come see me in the afternoon summit lab from 1 to 3 every day. Plenty of ways to get caught up if you are behind. All right. We don't really have a ton of work that we've done on Summit so far yet, since we've been like reading the book. The only thing we've really done on there is the entry event note taker under checkpoint 1, right, where we also did our family trees. Okay. So for today, you can see our goal is to understand and analyze different points of view in a story and how they affect that story. All right. So for our do now, I would like everybody to respond in the chat to this question. All right. What type of point of view is represented here in this picture? Good morning. Who we have joining us? Good morning, Kareem. Welcome. All right. So here's what I do now for today. What type of point of view is represented here? What type of point of view is this? Is it first person, second person, or third person? Please answer in the chat. You can type A, B, or C. You can type first person, second person, or third person, whichever you prefer. But tell me what type of point of view is this? Let's take a minute or two and see if we can get some responses to this. I should see you responding in the chat to this. All right, what do we think? Do we have any responses in the chat? We do not yet. So let's start responding to this if we can, please. All right. Again, uh, don't forget that participation is part of that attendance grade. All right. So I want to see at least 2 responses in the chat for this question for our do now today. All right. Looking at this picture right here, what type of point of view do we think is represented here? Is this first person point of view, second person, or third person? If you're not sure, take your best guess. All right. But let me know. You can type A, B, or C in the chat. All right. What can we come up with here? So let's give this maybe another minute, minute and a half. All right. Since it should not take super long to answer, but I got to see some answers in the chat from all of you before we can move on here. All right. Are we getting anything in here now? Let's give the chat a look-see again. Right, no worries. We got some in there from Zenalia. Awesome. All right, so Zenalia says first person. Let's see if we can get 1 or 2 more in the chat as well from somebody else too. So do we agree with Zenalia? Is this first person? Is it second person, third person? So anybody that we haven't heard from yet? Shadi, Ramai, Shamir, Kareem, I know you just joined us, Denim. Let's see if we can get 1 more response in the chat as well before we move on. What kind of point of view do we have here? First person, second person, or third person? What do we think? Give you guys 1 more minute. See if we can get at least 1 more response in the chat for this. Right, Denim also says A. Good job, thank you. And you are both correct, right? This is indeed a first-person shot, right? I'm surprised no answers from our Call of Duty players this morning for this question. So, Denim or Zanelia or anybody, doesn't have to be just them. How did you guys figure out it was first person? What tipped you off that uh, this picture is first person here? You can tell me in the chat. You can come off mute if that's easier. But how did you know that this is first person point of view represented here? And again, if you didn't answer, but you have an answer to this question, then feel free to answer that as well. I'll put it in the chat as well. So we know that it is first person. How'd you guys come to that conclusion? How can we tell that? What do you think? What gives this away as being first person? I know Denim and Zanelia, you guys both answered in the chat that it was first person. So how'd you guys know? What tipped you guys off? Or if anybody else has a thought, please share. All right. But how can we tell that this picture is in first person? What gives it away? Are we still alive out there? Have we fallen asleep? Have we faded away?
The perspective of it, the way that it's looking is coming directly from the player. But when you doing first person in a book, it'll be told first person because it'll be told from the person that is being like say if it's second person, somebody is telling somebody else's story.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's exactly right. We'll talk a little bit more about the second person thing, so we make sure we're on the same page with that. But as far as first person, you're absolutely right. So now, yeah, we can tell because it's from the player's perspective. So you're seeing it as if we were actually, holding the gun and looking that way. It's coming right from their field of view. Good morning, Faye. Thank you for joining us. All right. And Zanelia answered my next question and gave us a great segue, which is what does first person point of view in a story look like? And she told us exactly that, which is when we have a story told from the main character's point of view, or just, yeah, from the point of view of the person actually in the story. All right. So, do you guys know off the top of your head? Oop, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's go back here. All right. Can you guys think of, off the top of your head, any stories that you have read, any books you have read that you know are in first person point of view, whether it's you read them on your own, you read them in school? Um, do any books or stories come to mind that you guys can think of or remember that were told in first person point of view?
Not right now.
No. No worries if not, because that is what we're going to talk about today. Enola. I'm not familiar with that one, Faye. What is Enola? Is that a book? Is that a novel? You know what? I am going to look it up here so that I know. Spoken in a movie. Oh, are you? Do you mean is it the one Enola Holmes that was just on Netflix? Are you talking about that one? Yeah, they have a book too. All right, cool. That would be a good one. All right. Any other ones we can think of? And Faye, how do you know that Enola is told from first person? What are the things that tipped you off that made you think of that when I said, "Can you remember any first person stories that you've read?" Anything specific come to mind that tipped you off? Like, oh yeah, that is in first person. If so, what would those be? All right, well, if you can't think of any right now, that is okay because that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to do just that. All right, because point of view is something that we're going to talk about a lot in the rest of this project as we move forward. It's going to factor into the first checkpoint that we're going to try to tackle this week. All right. So that's why I wanted to review it a little bit today. And Zenelia already kind of hinted at this a little bit when we were answering our do now question. All right. But what is point of view? All right. So I'm going to go through a couple slides here. All right. If you want to screenshot something, if you want to, if you have stuff near you to take notes by hand, that's fine too. I don't have a note taker sheet for this for you today, but we are also recording, so you can also go back and watch the class recording on YouTube as well if you want to get it caught up later on today. All right. But point of view is the angle of considering things, which shows us the opinion or feelings of the individuals involved in a situation, right? So, like that picture I showed in the do now, we were considering things from the angle of the actual person, the actual player holding the rifle, right? As opposed to somebody else, right? In literature, the point of view is the mode of narration that an author employs to let the readers hear or see what takes place in a story, poem, or essay, right? There are three major types or perspective of point of view. I know Zenelia already pointed two of them out. We also had the other options, the other two as options in our do now. So those would be first person, second person, and third person. All right. So first person, like Zenelia pointed out for us earlier, I, me, myself, and we, and welcome to whoever has joined us. Ayana, good morning, good morning. All right. So Ayana, or those of you who are just joining us, we are discussing point of view this morning. So we can get a little bit of review before we analyze the point of view of our story homegoing for our first checkpoint. Okay. So first person point of view, we know we have I, me, myself, and we. Okay. An example of first person point of view would be I heard the door slam. Right. Second person point of view, this is the one that kind of trips people up a little bit. The pronoun we hear here is you. Right. And we don't usually see this a lot in stories. An example of second person point of view would be like you heard the door slam. Right. So if I was um an example of when we would hear this would be maybe I'm talking to my friend and we're trying to recall what happened the previous night, and I'm telling them a story, and and I'd be like, don't you remember, like, we went to dinner and then we came back and then you heard the door slam? That would be, I'm telling that story in second person point of view because I'm telling them what happened. I'm telling another person what happened to them in the story. All right. And then our most common point of view we have here is third person, which is she, he, they, and it. So this is where you're kind of like outside the story looking in. All right. So example here would be like Lupe heard the door slam. So it's not I heard the door slam. It's not you heard the door slam. It's somebody else telling the reader that, Lupe heard the door slam. Now, with third person, there's a little bit more we have to dig into because there are two kinds of third person point of view. Does anybody know either of them off the top of their head right now that can show off their literary memory and impress me? Again, you can tell me in the chat or come off mute since I can't see the chat when I'm sharing my screen here. But talking about third person, there's two types of third person point of view that we're going to talk about in the next slide. But I want to know if anybody knows what they are first before we get there. Any guesses? Anything come to mind?
Is it third person omniscient?
It sure is. Good job. Who was that?
Ayana.
Good job, Ayana. Thank you. Yes, you are exactly right. Excellent job. All right. So two kinds of third person omniscient. The first one, most common one, would be, or excuse me, two types of third person. And again, our pronouns for this are she, he, they, and it. All right. That's the biggest way to I'll back up here real quick. The biggest way to tell, what kind of point of view we have is to look at the pronouns that we're seeing. So if I'm reading a story and I see a lot of I, me, we, then I know it's first person. If I see she, he, they, it happened, then I know it's third person, right? Third person omniscient point of view is a point of view presented from the perspective of an all-knowing narrator. So a narrator that knows what everybody's thinking, what everybody's feeling, what's going to happen, right? This narrator knows what the characters are doing as well as what they are thinking and feeling, right? So here's an example of third person omniscient. This is an example from Lord of the Rings, right? A few creatures came and looked at them when the fire had died away. A fox passing through the wood on business of his own stopped several minutes and sniffed. Hobbits, he thought, well, what next? I have heard of strange doings in this land, but I have seldom heard of a hobbit sleeping out of doors under a tree. 3 of them. There's something mighty queer behind this. He was quite right, but he never found out any more about it. Right? So, what are the hints or what tips us off in that little excerpt here that it's third person omniscient? What are some of the things we see that let us know this is third person omniscient in this little excerpt right here? What jumps out to you right away? Made up scenes like a wolf can't talk. All right. So Zanelia, what you're talking about there is like personification and characterization, which is definitely true. But what we want to focus on is how do we know that it's third person omniscient? So we're focusing on the point of view. So what are we told about the wolf that might hint us that the point of view is third person omniscient, right? Because yes, we know wolves can't talk, so that would be an example of personification, another literary device. But what else do we learn about the wolf that would tip us off that, like, oh, this is third person omniscient? And again, think about our definition here. Third person omniscient point of view is presented from the perspective of an all-knowing narrator, right? Narrator knows what the characters are doing. Excuse me. Doing as well as thinking and feeling. So do we see any of that in this excerpt over here that would let us know, oh, hey, this is third person omniscient? If we go back to Zanelli's point about the fox, like, not only does the fox talk, what else, do we learn about the fox that would tip us off, like, oh, this is third person omniscient? Right. Are we able to know what the fox thinks? How he feels? Yes or no? What do we think? Does the narrator tell us how the fox thinks or feels here? Oop. Let's see, something just popped up in the chat. Let's gonna read it again. So he says no. Let's look at it again real quick. All right. All right. A few creatures came and looked at them when the fox had died away. A fox passing through the woods on business of his own stopped several minutes and sniffed hobbits. He thought, well, what next? I've heard of strange doings in this land, but I have seldom heard of a hobbit sleeping out of doors under a tree. 3 of them. There's something mighty queer behind this. He was quite right, but he never found out any more about it. Okay. So if you look at that last line at the end there, he was quite right, but he never found out any more about it. We know that the fox was right, but we also know what happens to him after that. It says he never found out any more about it, so we kind of know not only what he's thinking and feeling, but also what happens to him next. So are those good examples to tip us off that having tech issues? So would those be good examples to tip us off that it's third person omniscient? If we know that we know what happens to the fox after that, we know how he feels that the fox is right. What do we think? Yes, no? Can we say that's what clues us in that it's third person omniscient? Somebody we haven't heard from maybe yet this morning, or anybody else? Do we think this last little bit here that tells us that the fox was right, how he feels, and also tells us what happens to him next? Do we think this is what tips us off that it's third person omniscient? What do you guys think? Yes or no? Yeah, definitely, Ayana. All right. So not only um do we have I said he used the words them in a sentence. So not only do we have the right pronouns, them, so we know it's from a third person, but again, we also know because it's telling us, the thoughts and the feelings of the fox, of another character. And so if we have all of those things, if we know how characters are thinking and feeling, what happens, as well as the right pronouns, then we can say, yes, it's third person omniscient. Good job. Okay. Now, our other kind of third person is limited omniscient. Okay. This would be a point of view from the perspective of an all knowing narrator, again, who knows about only a few characters rather than all the characters in a narrative. This narrator knows what the few select characters are doing as well as what they are thinking and feeling. So this would be very similar to third person omniscient, except in third person omniscient, we know what every character is thinking and feeling. We're all knowing, right? So there's not one character in the book we don't know the thoughts and feelings of from that third person perspective. In limited omniscient, we have some of that. We have the all knowing, we know how they're thinking and feeling, the thoughts and feelings of these people, but only so a select group of characters, not everybody in the whole book. So here's an example from Chamber of Secrets. If we have any Harry Potter fans, that would be third person limited omniscient, right? And again, we're looking for those same pronouns: she, he, they, it. All right. Here's the excerpt. Harry had taken up his place at Wizard School, where he and his scar were famous. But now the school year was over, and he was back with the Dursleys for the summer, back to being treated like a dog that had rolled in something smelly. The Dursleys hadn't even remembered that today happened to be Harry's 12th birthday. Of course, his hopes hadn't been high. All right. So we can see we know the thoughts and feelings of at least one character here. Who would that character be in this example? Right, is that Zenalia coming back in? It is. Yes. Awesome. All right. So if we're looking at this example right here, zoom in a little bit. Whoa, too much. If we're looking at this example right here, all right, and we know in third person limited omniscient, we know the thoughts, feelings, actions of only a few select characters. Who is the character here in this example that we know the thoughts and feelings of? Yeah, so now you're right. It'd be Harry. Okay. Who then would be the characters that we don't know the thoughts and feelings of? I'll read through it one more time, real quick. Harry had taken up his place at Wizard School, where he and his scar were famous, but now the second year was over. Or, excuse me, now the school year was over, and he was back with the Dursleys for the summer, back to being treated like a dog that had rolled in something smelly. The Dursleys hadn't even remembered that today happened to be Harry's 12th birthday. Of course, his hopes hadn't been high. That's a typo with a question mark there. So we know all the thoughts, feelings of Harry. So who is the character or characters that we don't know the thoughts and feelings of in that example? Again, you can use process of elimination because we only talk about two characters in the whole thing.
The
So,
Dursleys.
yeah, the Dursleys, right, exactly. And we can see that's what they tell us on the bottom of the slide, too. That the omniscient narrator knows about Harry's thoughts and feelings, but not the Dursleys. So that's how we would know it's limited omniscient. Okay. how could we change this to regular omniscient? What would we have to do to change this to get to the first one we looked at, which is third person omniscient? What would we have to change? If we wanted to take this excerpt and take it from limited omniscient to regular omniscient, what would we have to change?
The feelings of Harry.
Of Harry or of somebody else?
Wait, I can't barely see. I gotta zoom in my hair. My screen keep going blank every time I zoom in. That's so weird.
Strange. So we already know Harry's thoughts and feelings. So if we already know,
if we had the Dursleys feelings.
right, we would have to. So that's what we would have to change, right? We would have to know. So instead of saying like the Dursleys hadn't even remembered, we could maybe the author would say something like, the Dursleys knew it was his 12th birthday, but they didn't care anyway, or something like that. That tells us the thoughts and feelings of all the characters, which we know is what we're looking for in regular omniscient. Good job though, picking that out. Okay. So just a few tips and tricks on analyzing and describing point of view, right? Before you begin writing your analysis, which is what we're going to do in our checkpoint, it is important to consider the text as a whole, including the thesis or main idea, the audience, the author, and the characters involved. All right. So to do that, consider following questions. So when we're thinking about point of view, we want to think about these questions, and I'll put this slide back up periodically as we go through looking at point of view for our checkpoint and further on in the project. But think about, excuse me, I cannot stop the yawns today. Think about who is the speaker, who is the audience, what type of source is this, what is the source and the speaker's purpose, what is the speaker's point of view, what words or phrases does the speaker use to convey the point of view. So this would be like, what are your pronouns? All right. I, she, we, they, right? Does the speaker use rhetoric required for level 6? Don't worry about the level part right now. Right. How does the point of view or purpose of the source connect back to my topic sentence? Right? How is the point of view in this source different from the point of view in others? So if we're like comparing points of view, right? Does this point of view have any limitations? Meaning, is it third person limited omniscient? Like, do we not know the point of view of some of the characters? All right. So these would be questions we want to think about. All right. So as we kind of wrap up here for today, my last question would be, I'm going to put this in the chat for everybody, right? What point of view is our story Homegoing told from? Okay. So those of you who have been in class, who have been following along, reading that story, what point of view is Homegoing told from?
Third.
Say it again, Zenelia. I'm sorry.
I think it's third.
It is third. Do we know if it's omniscient or limited omniscient?
I'm not sure. I haven't really gotten a chance to get into.
All right. Well, let's take a look real quick and investigate. Because you are correct. It is third person.
Oh, girl.
All right. I'm going to share my screen here. We'll pull up just a short little excerpt and we'll see if we can decide, is this third person omniscient or is it third person limited? Okay. So this is a little excerpt from the first part of chapter 1. All right. So hopefully you can see it on my screen share. His name was James Collins, and he was the newly appointed governor of the Cape Coast Castle. Within a week, he had come back to the village to ask Baba for Effie's hand in marriage. Akube's rage at the proposal filled every room like hot steam. She is all but promised to a Bhikkhu, he yelled at Baba when Baba told him that he was considering the offer. All right. So this little
Can
part
I
right
get
here.
that copy instead of like doing it on a AirPod?
Say it again.
Can I get that copy instead of doing it on an AirPod?
Yeah, this I can put the link to this in the chat too. And we're not always gonna do it on the Nearpod. Remember, that was just for that section. We'll kind of like go back and forth. But
Yeah, I
the
know, but I can't get to the I can't really like sit and really like listen to it.
I
So
hear you.
I need to really,
Yeah,
yeah.
I hear you. As long as you get those questions answered, that's the part that I'm checking. All right. But yeah, I'll put a link to this in the chat so you can save it. All right. But so anybody who can help us out, we know that it's third person, but based on that excerpt we just read, okay, do we think it's third person omniscient or third person limited omniscient? Anybody else we haven't heard from yet besides Zenalia who could maybe help me out on this one? So Ayana, Faye, Denham, anybody else who's still with us this morning? Thinking about this excerpt that starts here at his name and ends at considering the offer. Think about, do we know the thoughts and feelings of all the characters or just a few? So do we have third person omniscient here or third person limited omniscient? What do we think? And then I just put the link to it in the chat for you. What do we think here? Any thoughts before we wrap up here today? Do we have third person omniscient or third person limited omniscient? Remember what the differences are between the two. All right. I'll read it one more time again. This time, again, make sure you're listening for, all right, what are the differences between omniscient and limited omniscient? Do we hear any of them in this little excerpt? All right. His name was James Collins, and he was the newly appointed governor of the Cape Coast Castle. Within a week, he had come back to the village to ask Baba for Effie's hand in marriage. Kobe's rage at the proposal filled every room like hot steam. She is all but promised to a Bhikkhu, he yelled at Baba when Baba told him that she was considering the offer. So what do you think? Third person limited or third person omniscient? You can tell me in the chat. You can come off mute. But I got to hear from somebody before we wrap this up here today.
Can you repeat the question again?
Sure. Question is, we know that our story Homegoing is being told from third person point of view. We're just trying to figure out, is it third person limited or is it third person omniscient, right? And so to figure that out, I have this little excerpt here at the top of the page that I will read one more time and see if we can figure out which one it is, all right? His name was James Collins, and he was the newly appointed governor of the Cape Coast Castle. Within a week, He had come back to the village to ask Baba for Effia's hand in marriage. Kobe's rage at the proposal filled every room like hot steam. She is all but promised to Abiku, he yelled at Baba when Baba told him that she was considering the offer. So what do we think? Third person limited or third person omniscient?
I think it's third person omniscient. Or I think it is the one.
Why omniscient? You're right, but tell me why you think that.
Because I feel like it's describing one character in third person.
It's describing
Like
the third
talking about
person
the one character.
because we can see the right pronouns, right? Do we know how each character thinks and feel? Do we know what they think and feel? Are we able to tell how, what James Collins thinks and feels? Are we able to tell what Baba thinks and feels, or only one of them?
I think only James feels.
It might seem like that at first, but
Oh no, both of them.
if we look at right here, Kobe's rage at the proposal filled every room like hot steam. So we know, that he's angry. We know how he's feeling. He's feeling, enraged at that thought. So that's what would tip us off that, yes, it's third person omniscient, because not only do we know, how James Collins feels, right, and what he's doing, we also know the same thing for Kobe. At his disapproval of the proposal. So our answer would be yes, it is third person omniscient, at least that section of the story. All right. Now, what we'll look at when we come back next class is another section of the story that is going to be from the point of view or the perspective of a different person in that family tree. All right. So, ladies and gents, progress reports will be coming out this week, probably Wednesday, right? If you didn't get your stuff in by Friday, then obviously it won't be on the progress report, but it does not mean you cannot still turn it in. So I'm looking for the Nearpod video, those questions to be answered, right? And I'm also looking for your family tree if you still don't have that in. If you are behind and want to get caught up, I will be in the Summit Lab later today from 1 to 3. It is the same link that you used to get to this class this morning. So please don't be afraid to visit me in there later if you have questions on anything. Okay? All right. So unless you have any other questions for me, then that is all I have for y'all today. You are good to go. If I have you again next period for English, I'm going to end the chat and then I will see you back in there. Okay? All right, have a good one. I will see you again on Thursday. And stay safe. All right? Just hanging on to see if there's any questions or any last minute issues. If not, you guys are good to go. All right, y'all. Thanks again. Stay safe. And I will see you on Thursday. Good job.